More than a century before Christopher Columbus stepped foot in the New World, Native Americans were using the stars to guide several aspects of their daily lives. Oklahoma archaeologist Susan Vahick discovered a star chart from a site near the Kaw Reservoir, which tells the story of life before Europeans arrived.
This story sort of starts about 40 years ago when a series of houses began to erode out of Kaw Reservoir. Uncas was on the edge of Kaw Reservoir. When it was originally occupied, it sat on a high terrace overlooking the Arkansas River. And then in the mid-70s, they built Kaw Reservoir, and it began to erode the site area and exposed a series of houses. So the site no longer exists. So this is pretty much what an outline of what the houses looked like. They were square, probably had 4 center posts that supported the roof. There was a central fire hearth in it, and we ran a series of radiocarbon dates, I think ultimately 5 or 6. 2 of them were no good, but they came out around 1380 AD. Whether that's the exact time that the site was occupied or not is a matter of conjecture. A little bit about the cultural inventory. These are a series of ceramic vessels. The designs on them are known as opposed diagonals. That's not a very common ceramic design style in Oklahoma, but it was very common in north central Kansas, southeastern Nebraska. The ceramic vessel style was also very similar to vessels in north central Kansas, but were much smaller. So whether there's a connection there or not, we really don't know. And now we're going to look at what I'm initially going to call a Daub panel, but in fact, given the title of my talk, turns out to be a star chart. So, when Jerry and Peggy excavated House 1, they discovered the remains of what I'm calling a Daub panel over in here. And probably you can't see it that well, but most of the panel looks like when it burned, it fell face forward with the back up and the face of it down. You can see here a series of fingertip impressions, and you can see it better in there. So when they turned many of these pieces over, there were more fingertip impressions to be seen, and they glued some of them together, but they didn't. It was a contract report. They had been hired to excavate and quickly turn in a report to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They didn't have time to explore much of what they had recovered. So I got to this point, and then I thought, well, it's too patterned for a little kid to have just stuck his fingers in it, or her fingers in it. And so it must portray something. What could it portray? So I have some friends who are amateur astronomers, and one of them is also an archaeologist. And I said, would you come look at this and see if this might be a star chart? I couldn't figure out what else it would be once I eliminated the random little kid running around and trying to destroy Mommy's walls. And they suggested that yes, they thought it might be, and they suggested the Pleiades as a possibility for one part of the chart. So things lined up pretty well, probably better than anything's ever lined up in my life. So I thought, this actually might be what it is. So pretty good conformity here with literally the first image I saw on Google. I go, my God, what kind of luck. I think it functioned as a calendar. You could assess it nightly. in comparison to sunrise and sunset. It could provide you the timing that you needed for various cultural and subsistence events.
Susan Vahick says the star chart makes it clear that interest in the stars goes back much farther than written documents do by at least 500 years. She also suspects that there are more star charts that people have just not yet paid any attention to because they didn't know what they were.